Hello YouTube, and welcome to part 20 of our Realism Overhaul series. Last time we used the Firestorm to return some data. I think right now we're going to go and check on our moon satellite, Moonfinder, and see if we can't get some more science. So first thing I'm going to do is use this mod to actually bring up all these windows so I can quickly toggle everything. And then I realized that in the new version of KSP, we can actually use these the built-in windows and just sort of lock them in place. So I'm going to lock those in place to collect all my science and figure out what biomes we still need to collect science for. And now this is just going to be a few minutes of grinding. Right now we're in space high, and we're just going to try to fly over as many biomes. Right now we're lunar seas, lowlands, now the highlands, and we're just going to try to collect as much science we can up here. I think in space high all we can really do is gravity scan. I don't think we get any more. But now that we're in space low, we can use more of the equipment and collect some more science. So you saw the Earth was there. I think pretty soon we're going to go below the moon's horizon. And because we don't have another satellite up here to relay communications, we're going to lose our communications link. So I'm just going to try to get as much science as I can right now. So right now we're lowlands. Still trying to send science. I still have that bug where I'll hit transmit and I don't get science all the time, but now you can see we're below the horizon, and there's the Earth again, and now we're going back to in space high. I think all in all this got me about 100 more science, so I guess we'll see whenever when we go back to Earth. But I think at this point I'm not really collecting too much more science. And I'm going to use the science that we just collected now to unlock a bunch of nodes that we have here. So that flight control node gives us reaction wheels, so those are going to be pretty helpful. There's some other advanced orbital rocketry I think we're going to unlock. Stage combustion. Some of these are really kind of finicky to unlock. It's like you need to go back and click on all the prerequisites before it'll actually let you click on it. So that's why you see I'm clicking back there. We were able to unlock that. Still have over 100 science, so right now I'm just trying to get early Hydrolox engines, but wasn't letting me do it. There's some miniaturization, so that's kind of cool. There's second gen capsules. We haven't even had the first one yet. But I'm just going through, finally it's letting me unlock some of these things. So, what can we do? Well, we can use those 7 upgrade points to speed up our technology. That'll help. And what's next to unlock? We have electrics there. But we also have basic capsules, so I think it's about time we sent someone to space. So I'm going to go back over here and head over to Cape Canaveral. Then we'll go ahead and hop in the VAB. And let's start with a launch escape system. So that's over here in structural utility. Yeah, here it is in utility. So we'll put a launch escape system. And I'm going to want to wrap a fairing around that because eventually I'm going to jettison it. So I'm going to go over to structural or aerodynamics. I always have a hard time remembering which is where. But here's our interstage fairing, so I'll drop that in there. And we're going to need some room for that capsule in there. So now I'm just going to go ahead and grab the Mark 1 pod, which is 90,000 credits to unlock. So that really eats into our budget, but that's all right. And I'm going to drop that in there. I'm going to make him the root part. And now I'm going to get rid of all that interstage stuff. And now, whenever we're done with our capsule stage, we can drop it in that interstage and put a fairing around it. And that way we can have our launch escape system contained. And now we still have room for a parachute on top. So I'm going to go ahead and speed up this video now. This was about a 30-minute build, and I'll just kind of touch on the highlights. So we're going to need decoupler, that way the only thing that's going down is our capsule. And then I thought it'd be cool to have like this structural feature with some cylindrical tanks inside. So I'm making these tanks, I've attached the engine to it, and I'm going to make it green and attach 4 of them around a center tank. And I'm just going to use the offset tool to bring that into that little structure there. So I think that looks like a little cool command module, I guess you can call it. What do we need to do? Now I need to take this off and I need to adjust the parachute settings. And I'm doing it just with whatever's going to be falling. And now I think we can put a decoupler there. and adjust our interstage fairing to the right size. And that's going to be like our little launch escape system. So if something goes wrong, we can just jettison that one part and then blow off the fairings, separate, and parachute down. So got some solar panels. I don't really think I'll be up there long enough to need it, but now we're going to need a second stage. So I started with 2 HA10s and playing around with how much fuel, and that gave me a pretty big burn time. So I went instead with 3 HA10s. That way it'd be closer to the 5-minute rated time. I figured I'd put this little cool tank to sort of make it look like how maybe a real one would look, where you have that bulge of the where the tank is on the inside. So now we're going to just copy that and use this as our main stage. So I started with the LR79, and excuse me, we'd set the fuel tank, and I didn't like the little bulge there. It was messing up whenever I scaled stuff. So we're just extending this, and I'm looking at some other engine options that we have, because right now this does not give us enough delta V, and it's actually a low takeoff thrust weight ratio. So I figured I'd see what happened if I stuck some boosters on the side, but they're not really boosters because they're really the same engine, same size, so they don't have a different burn time. So I tried reducing it a bit, but now the bottoms of the engines are disconnecting. I don't know why they're doing that, so I'll need to go down and fix those. Now I started looking at maybe using the LR79, which has some different specs to it, and also looked at upgrading some engines, but I think in the end I came up with a solution that was pretty similar to that first one, where the boosters are roughly the same size. I think they burn just a few seconds shorter, so honestly I don't even know if it's worth, I mean obviously we get more delta V by doing the decoupler, but I don't know how much it's really worth using that. So now I'm going through adding some control units just to make sure that we can control with our mass limitations. And now it's time to add some launch clamps, and we're going to enable the pumps, and I think that's pretty close to it. We're just going to adjust our staging. Sometimes moving things around makes offset pieces pop out, so we got to adjust those back. And I forgot the decoupler for there, so whenever we use our launch escape system, we're not actually pulling the whole vehicle with us. We can actually just pop off that top fairing spot. So one thing I did forget to do actually though is set up the abort action group to actually fire off that decoupler and engage our launch abort system, but I'll do that at the end. So we're going to call this the Gamma, I think is what we named it. And at this point I think we're good to save this and start building it. Alright, so we're going ahead and warp to completion of this being built. But before we actually launch it, we should see what contracts we have available. So I'll roll it out to the pad, and then I'll go over to the administration building. If I can find it, let's go ahead and warp to the morning. So there we go. And here we go, mission control. And we have some science around the moon, we have some satellites, we have some RP0 stuff. These are all milestones, but we'll get those automatically. It's not something we can actually select. We have X-planes high, so we'll actually should break 60 kilometers, but the supersonic one requires us to maintain a certain speed and altitude. Our sounding rockets also need to be unmanned, so we won't be able to do that. So I really think that the X-planes high is really the only one that we can do. So I think we'll go for launch. We'll select Semyon over here, and now we're at the tower, not the tower, the what do you call this? The pad. Oh my goodness. So we're at the pad. This is, I think, where I realized that I didn't hook up the abort system, because I was actually going to demo that for the video. And I thought about recovering it and fixing it, but I said, you know what, I'll just test this in a different video. I've tested it before, and I think this design is pretty solid, but I think we're just going to go ahead and go for launch. So I'll move my MechJib window down here, and I want my Smart ASS system so I can lock into whatever heading I want. So we'll just start, of course, pointing up. That's usually the direction you want your rockets to go for launch. Lock that in, And I think we're good to fire up the main engines. Alright, throttle up and release the launch clamps. And we've cleared the clamps. And pretty soon we'll start our pitch over maneuver. Now, if something does go wrong here, it would be kind of unfortunate that I don't have the launch board system, but I have a feeling that we're going to be okay. So we are passing 55, 60 meters per second, 70 meters per second. I think we should start our pitch over maneuver. So I'll just knock that down a degree or two, or three, and eventually we'll just start to we'll lock into surface prograde once our velocity vector falls a little bit. So far we're doing pretty good. We're coming up on 1.5 Gs. 1 3/4 Gs. Don't remember the maximum G load we get, so we'll just see what happens. But now we're kind of locked into surface velocity prograde, and I felt like we weren't falling fast enough, so I'm actually going to knock this down a degree or two. So far our ascent looks pretty good. We're supersonic now, and we passed 10 kilometers. Semyon looks pretty frightened in the bottom right, but I think he's actually enjoying himself. We're down to 1 minute and 20 seconds left on those main engines. Now, normally whenever you see this configuration, like the heavy models, that is normally what they call them, like the Falcon 9 Heavy, where they have the 3 boosters. There's the Delta 4 Heavy, where they have the 3 boosters on the side like that. Generally what they do, at least with the Delta 4 Heavy, they throttle down that main engine, and that way the 2 outer engines, they'll continue at full throttle. And I guess that's what lets that center engine last longer, is because they throttle it down. It's not used as much fuel. I don't think it's as efficient, but they also don't want to over-G the aircraft. So at this point I'm going to go orbital prograde. In this case, all those 3 engines are going to pretty much burn out at the same time, since this is not a throttleable engine. The Falcon 9 Heavy, if I'm correct, and someone can correct me if I'm not, but I think they actually transfer fuel from those outer tanks into the main ones, so that's why it burns off faster. So we can see we're getting a bunch of speed and altitude records. We just passed 80 kilometers, so we should have actually completed our contract already. Actually, we might need to land for that to count, so I think that was part of it. We'll see. About to pass 100 kilometers, and now technically I think we're in space. KSP says we're in space at 140, but I think the real-world scenario is 100. So it looked like we were pushing about 9 Gs there, so right before those engines cut out. So I think we might need to refine that design. I think that's a lot to handle, and that might not be super realistic. But now we're just running on our 3 AJ10s, and these will burn for another 5 minutes. We can see I still have tons of records. We have an apoapsis of nearly 500 kilometers now, so that's pretty high. That might sound like a good thing, but the higher we go, the less we get to use the Oberth effect, and so it might actually come to hurt us in the long run. We'll see what happens. But I'm going to speed this up. That way you don't have to sit through 5 minutes of this engine just burning while we point at the horizon. So, I think pretty soon... Hey look, Semyon looks a little happier. So I think soon we're going to be able to collect some science from up here, but that's a cool view. You can sort of see in the cockpit. So now our apoapsis is over 500 kilometers. And if we look, we're just now... Well, we're about to pass 5,000 meters per second right now, and and we have another 2.7 meters per second left. So that only gets us up to 7.7 kilometers a second. So I don't think that's going to be enough to go orbital velocity. In addition, 800 meters per second of that is going to be in this last stage, which says it burns for 20 minutes. So really, I had planned that stage to only be for like deorbit maneuvers and stuff, but looks like our AG-10s are about to burn out. So we'll see how much we can actually get off this little stage up here. We'll enable RCS. We have little RCS thrusters in that pod, which is kind of nice. That's why we didn't have to add RCS ports. And let's see, so now we have 800 meters per second of delta V left. Yeah, so we're not going to quite make it. So even though we're burning and our delta V is barely dropping, you can see we're actually slowing down because we're suffering gravity losses still. So again, I guess I'll speed this up. I'm pretty sure this is going to be re-entering. Our apoapsis is up to over 600 kilometers now, so we really didn't get to utilize the Oberth effect as much as we'd like. I mean, I guess it's a relative term. At least we're not at like 6 megameters or anything like that, but still not as low of an orbit as we would have liked to achieve. So let's go ahead and speed this up. Hopefully soon we'll at least see our orbital speed increase. Okay, there it goes. It's now increasing. So at least we're getting a little bit faster. We can test a more realistic re-entry. The only thing about this is we're going really fast. I mean, we're going almost 7 kilometers a second, but our path, back to the Earth is still kind of steep. I kind of would like a little more shallower approach, and the reason for that is as we get hit thicker and thicker atmosphere, it's the aerodynamic forces are really going to be pounded on this craft, and there is a possibility when we have crew in here that we don't want to over G. We did pull 9 Gs on takeoff, and he seemed to be okay, so while that might not be super realistic, I mean, I guess it's not going to kill you 9 Gs for, a few seconds. Yeah, fighter pilots do that, but I really like to not really G-shock him too much. So we're below 200 kilometers now. I think it's time that we start orienting our craft to go backwards. So I should probably spin this around pretty soon. And then we'll jettison off that bottom stage there. I was right that I didn't need those solar panels. We weren't up there very long. So I don't want very long. I want normal. That way our fuel tanks are perpendicular to the direction that we're going. And we'll go ahead and jettison these guys off. And now we can point retrograde. And we should arm that parachute. So I'll be doing that pretty soon. There we go. Now this has a descent mode, and what descent mode is supposed to do if you angle it right, and I'll go ahead and turn that on once I get that out of the way. So there you can see turn descent mode on, and that changes where the center of gravity is located. I guess it has some sort of counterweight in there that it shifts, and it's going to angle this, or the aerodynamic forces are going to push it in such a way that the center of gravity will try to be lower, and it's going to not fly straight. It's going to be at an angle, and that angle is actually going to make the bottom act as a lifting body. And if we were in a pretty shallow descent, what we would see is that bottom's just sort of acting as a wing, and you could actually push yourself up. And I think the Soyuz did that. I'm not sure if the Apollo does, but you go down for a bit into the atmosphere. You slow down, but you actually then lift out of it again, and that descent mode helps with that. And so now whenever you'll re-enter the second time, you're going slower, but in this case I don't think it's going to help us too much. We are already falling at over 1,000 meters per second, and we are at 80 kilometers right now. So you can see the surface is pretty hot. That should be our fuel tanks exploding over there, not us, so that's good. That's the last of that. And we are starting to feel a few Gs. We're at 1 G right now. We're getting some re-entry effects, but now we are climbing up pretty close to 2 Gs, 3 Gs. So this is climbing pretty rapidly. Now we're below 60 kilometers. 4 Gs. I'm going to turn off descent mode and see that snaps back to normal. Now we're at 7 Gs. We're getting pretty close to 9 Gs. This is where we really need to be careful. We're still going 600 meters per second, or 6,000 meters per second, pushing 12 Gs. I think we're going to be hitting 15 Gs, and Semyon looks like he's doing okay. His eyes are bugging out of his head, but he's not dead yet. Our G meter is now off the chart, so I think that's because of our steep re-entry. We're still going 3.5 kilometers a second, and our G meter is dropping, so that's good. We're 2.5 kilometers a second. I think we're going to make it. That was pretty close. If he did black out, which this doesn't really simulate, but at least we had armed our parachute, so hopefully we would our parachute would go off and we wouldn't just slam into the ocean. That could be bad. But now we are passing 30 kilometers, so at a much more reasonable speed. We're still going supersonic, but actually it looks like at this speed it's safe to open the chute. So I'm going to time warp to where that happens. Now if we go look at the map, we'll see that we're off the coast of Africa. This is actually pretty close to where the equator and prime meridian meet. So you can see our coordinates, almost 4 degrees south and nearly 5 degrees east, so pretty close to that. Yeah, wow, we were really close to 5 degrees east, but we will fire off that parachute, and now our parachute's open, and we should gracefully descend into the water. We soon will have touchdown. There we go. And we float, we don't sink, so that's promising. And there's our contract complete, so we did need to recover this guy. So that was a fairly successful mission. We did recover somebody from space. It was only a suborbital flight, but it's better than a flight that exploded on re-entry. Our guy got no XP, so I guess he wasn't too impressed about going into space, but we got our capsule back, so we'll be able to reuse that. I don't know if they've actually reused capsules before. That seems kind of dangerous with the blader and stresses that have been put on capsules, but we'll reuse it. You know, we're Kerbals. So let's go back, see what's going to unlock next. We're going to unlock electrics. That should be pretty good. In the meantime, let's go into the VAB and let's fix our action group. And we're going to go to our abort sequence, and I'm going to want to disengage that decoupler right there. So decouple, and we're going to activate our launch abort engine. So I think next time we're going to go to actually get someone in orbit. There's a few tweaks I think we can make to both our ascent profile, and we might have unlocked some new technology by then. But if you liked what you saw, feel free to subscribe, leave your comments below, and until then, see you next time.